We interrupt your regularly scheduled programming to bring you some breaking news. There's been reports all over the area of something crazy going on, something big. People's homes, their minds even, are being taken over by something called, what is it they're calling it? They're calling it Bad Movie Debate.
What up, nerds? It's me, Jacob Babb with Bad Movie Debate, and we're here to do a Wolfman review episode, the 2025 edition of Wolfman, because there's been a bunch of them that have come out, and we have a fresh one for this new year. So first, before we get to my thoughts, gonna go over tomato meter and IMDb and all that good stuff, just cause pretty interesting results on this one actually. So 53% on the tomato meter, so the critics, 57 for the popcorn meter, to the audience, which is pretty weird. Usually it's like critics are way up here and love it and audiences hate it, or vice versa, or sometimes they agree it's great, or sometimes they agree it sucks, but being mixed right like literally only 4 points away from each other is pretty weird. That doesn't happen a lot. IMDb 5.9, a little below average for them. They're usually between like 6.4 and 6.8, whether it's good or bad. So that a little subpar on IMDb apparently. And then Metacritic 51 for their critics, 5.2 for their users. So very strong, mixed, average, mid, if you will, opinions about this movie. And I can understand why. So first and foremost, the acting was fine. The sets were beautiful. You know, it mostly takes place in the Oregon woods, and like so it's beautiful up there. The Pacific Northwest, always beautiful to see on film, or in film rather, and all that stuff is fine and dandy. The costuming and like the hair and makeup and stuff, like the Wolfman men. Spoiler alert. There's going to be a bunch of spoilers in this review, so if you haven't seen it, maybe stop here and come back. But there are 2 Wolfmen in this movie, actually, and it's fine. It's not as exciting as you want it to be. But all the costuming looked great, like all that, like, transformation-y, like, between being a man, between being the Wolfman thing, like, all looked fine. It's no American Werewolf in London, but it's fine. We can't literally all make Oscar categories because of how good we are every time, because that's what happened with that, but that's another story for another time. I digress as usual. Anyway, so all of that like surface level like filmmaking stuff is totally fine. It's exactly what you would expect from Blumhouse, however you want to say it. They have the budget to do all of that stuff, and the acting was fine. Everybody did what they needed to do. The main issue with this one, for me, is the story. As a fan of, like, the Universal movie monsters and, like, the classic werewolf, like, I like did my whole Nosferatu thing. I love vampires. I also love werewolf lore and mythology and stuff. And it was just kind of not disappointing. I thought it was an interesting concept to go in and be like, it's not about a curse, it's not about like the full moon or anything like that. It's straight up just like a disease that you can get, and apparently it's, and like I don't know, they have this whole thing at the beginning about in the 90s some hikers and stuff, and like they don't know what to call it, but then the natives from the land called it a name I'm not going to try to pronounce because I will butcher it and I don't want to do that. But then it's called the face of the wolf is what that translates to. And I don't know. I mean, that didn't really seem to be super relevant to the story in any way. They just kind of put that in there at the very beginning on text, like before we get into the movie and stuff. So that just seemed kind of random and not really necessary to the story. Like they were trying to add, I mean, I guess you could argue like they were trying to let you know that this is a different kind of a werewolf lore. It's not the, like, I guess, traditional European thought of what a werewolf is, where you get bit, and then there's the full moon, and it's, like, a curse, and, like, you're fine besides that. Like, you just become a, like, half wolf, half man, and you're there the entire time, and you're stuck like that forever. So, I don't know. I just didn't want that. That's not what I was looking for in this movie, especially calling it the Wolfman, and Universal being one of the like producers and like distributors of it. I like the old school one, you know, with Lant, you know, like that's the shit that I was looking for and wanting to happen, but Alas, that is not what happened. So, a little bummed about that, but, I was like, okay, whatever. They let you know right off the bat that that's not the case, so you don't go in, you know pretty soon. So that's good that they do that at least. But then the, like, actual story of, like, what... So, it's... I'm trying to figure out the best way to phrase this. I feel like it's, like... I don't want to use the word generational trauma because that doesn't seem what it is, but it's mostly like this, like the father apparently has some kind of, he had a shit dad. Shit dad who lived off the grid on his farm in Oregon, and that's where they're going when all this starts to happen because he dies, quote unquote, again, spoilers, blah, 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 blah. And so really at the end of the day, the entire movie is pretty much just about how the dad, Blake, is worried he's gonna be a bad dad or something, but they never really address that. Like, you see more problems with him and his wife. Like, his wife's working still, they're both writers, he's in between jobs, okay? And so he's staying home with the daughter, and they're hanging out, and the mom specifically says she's like something about how she's like not sure if she can be a good mom and stuff. So it's more about her not being a good mom. I don't know. They just don't really like flesh out how the dad has been a bad dad or what he's done. Like, he seems like the daughter loves him and everything, like, but the whole thing is about his dad was bad and he's worried about being a bad father. And again, spoiler alert, his father is the wolf man who like scratches him at the beginning, and that's what makes him turn into a wolf man. And then but then he doesn't attack the mom or the daughter and stuff, and he hates being a part of it. Like, I don't know, it just doesn't make a lot of sense in that regard. Like, if that's what the movie is about, shouldn't he have been the one that was working and a bad parent? Like, why did they do it that way? Like, I'm missing something there, and if somebody could let me know, I'd love to know why they did that, because it just really doesn't make any sense. He seems like a perfectly fine, competent father, because he's the one that's at home being a dad, and he specifically says that when they meet that dude who like takes them up to where his dad's farm is, because they get lost for a second near the beginning. He's like, oh, well, I'm a writer, but I'm in between jobs, so right now I'm a dad. And he looks back at his daughter, and she's all smiling and happy, and the mom's the one who's, like, kind of rolling her eyes about it. So, like, what? Like, and so, yeah, so it turns out the Wolfman, the original one that turns Blake into a Wolfman at the beginning, is his own dad, and he has to kill him to save his wife and his kid, and then the mom shoots him because the daughter and him can communicate through their minds somehow. It's like a cute little thing that how close they are, which again does not make sense to me. Like, if they can communicate, like, because he's such a good father to her, then why is that what the whole point of the movie felt like? Like, that's what it felt like the entire thing was truly about, like, not just surface level and stuff. And I have nothing against, like, sympathetic monster movies. They're just really not, they're really usually not my bag. You can do them right. This one I felt just like didn't flesh out the issues and the fears and the worries that Blake was having about his father, and like about why he ran away from his father and like never talked to him again and stuff. Like, all that stuff just doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me, because he just never, I don't know, he just doesn't ever do anything with it. He just mentions like that his father's finally dead, apparently, officially. His father went into the woods, never came back, so Oregon officially said he was dead. Here's the keys, get all of his shit out of the house, and that's why they go. But like, and they're like, yeah, he sucked and stuff, and then like, there's a specific line he says to his daughter at one point where he says something along the lines of like, oh, sometimes you try to protect your kid from scars so much, you're the thing that ends up scarring them in the end or something, which is what happened with his dad. And now that he's a father, he understands that. And then he gets turned into a wolf man, and that obviously is going to scar his daughter one way or another, literally, or just like emotionally. And but she literally clings to him the entire time until he turns into a wolf man. She's like Like, he goes to, like, turn the lights on, and she's, like, with the mom, and then he comes back up, and she comes running to him and is like, Daddy, like, keep me safe. And the mom, again, is, like, rolling her eyes, like, why doesn't she trust me to do that? So I just don't, like, she was, like, the mom was the one feeling like she wasn't being a good mother or wasn't good enough for her daughter or whatever. And, like, the daughter and the dad were, like, totally copacetic. So I don't really understand why he's the one that turned. It should have been her. Or he should have been the one that was still working and she was the one that was being the stay-at-home mom. And then, like, just flip those elements of the characters and stuff. Like, I don't really get why that was obviously what the movie was about and, like, the message they were trying to do. And, like, is it's like it's trying to ride on this whole thing of, like, the fear of, like, your past trauma and your, like, sickness. Like, they literally call it, like, oh, daddy's sick, why is daddy sick? And it's like, oh, well, his dad was sick and it made him sick and stuff. And it's just, like, so very obvious, like, the whole thing. But, like, they didn't have a bad relationship. So I just don't really fucking understand why it went like that in any way at all. So, I mean, it is what it is. They were trying to get deep with it, and I just think they missed the mark on it. There's nothing wrong with trying to get deep with a werewolf story. It's a literary monster, you know, like, there's literary source material of that kind of, like, thing. So, like, I totally understand why they were trying to go for it. I just don't think they did it because just the writing just did not piece together in a way that made a whole lot of sense, unfortunately. Yeah, I don't know. I just, I mean, if I had to get, I would say 5 is fine because it looks good and, like, it was a fine watch. I did get kind of bored and was, I'm pretty sleepy today, so I did kind of, like, there was some drags where I was kind of like, whoa, wake back up, which is not what you want in a monster movie. So that wasn't great, but, like, oh, and then this arm scene that I keep seeing people push and stuff, like, that was so crazy. No, pretty standard, typical stuff. Like, it's gross, obviously, but that, and, like, that's the point. But, like, it wasn't that brutal or that intense, and I don't know why everybody was freaking out about that. If you've seen any horror movie in the past 20 or 30 years, shit, the last 40 years now, it's nothing you haven't seen before and nothing you can't handle today. So points off for that for sure, because I was excited to, like, be like, oh, okay, something crazy is gonna happen with that. No, very, very disappointing. I guess it was kind of cool the way that they, like, they would, like, shift the perspective from, like, the mom and the daughter to him, and then it's like you could see the world how he was seeing it, because, like, and, like, you couldn't understand them, but you could understand him now and stuff, because, like, when he started to transform, like, you can't understand what he's saying, but then you shift and, like, everything's brighter because he's got wolf eyes and he can hear shit like crazy and all that stuff, and, like, so they can't understand each other, and, like, again, that's, like, the sympathetic monster thing, and I don't think that's a bad route to take about going about it, like, actually getting some of his perspective instead of just relying on, like, oh yeah, obviously he doesn't want to kill his kid and his wife and stuff. That sucks. Like, why would he want to do that even though he's, like, going crazy and, like, has, like, this wolfman disease or whatever? Like, it was cool to, like, see that, like, actually see that, like, played out, like, visually and stuff and, like, narratively. So, like, that was okay, but I don't know, there's this thing with, like, this telepathic communication, like, him and his daughter play a thing where, like, they, like, touch each other's foreheads, and it's like, oh, what am I thinking? And she's like, oh, that you love your little girl, and he's like, that's exactly it, word for word, and it's like, okay, a cute thing he does with his kid, right? Whatever she says, that's the correct answer. Probably was thinking that at the time, but regardless. But then, like, he's, like, fully gone, it's near the end of the movie, and she does it to him, and he's not attacking, and she's like, I love you so much, and he can understand her all of a sudden. Like, I get it, but it just kind of like, oh, come on. Like, I don't know. It just didn't, again, the sympathetic monster thing is just not really for me, especially when it's Wolfman. You know, like, if you name it a different thing, then maybe I'm a little more open to seeing it. Like, don't make it Wolfman, because there was nothing about no full moons, nothing about no curses, nothing about no silver, Nothing like that. It was a disease of some sort, which is like, again, I get that they were establishing like kind of their own lore for it and everything, but I thought there was a lot to be desired in that regard, and the whole narrative of like him not wanting to scar his daughter the way his dad was scarred, and his dad gave him the disease because he blah 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 blah. Just it was just kind of a drag, man. To be honest, if you're gonna make a horror movie that has a monster movie specifically that has like a sympathetic monster and is like a little bit deeper than just like a monster going crazy and killing a bunch of people and everything, then it's got to make a little bit more sense, unfortunately. And this one just didn't make a whole lot of sense when you kind of think about it. So just make a monster movie. And just like why even have him turn into a monster? I don't know. Like, again, if you flip those certain things with the mom and the dad, like, because she's the one that's feeling neglected or not feeling like she's being a bad parent, but there's nothing about her past in the movie at all, and he's the one that's all worried about it, but she loves him and everything's totally copacetic between them, like everything's cool. I don't understand. It really just doesn't make any sense. So yeah, just drop all that, cut all that, leave that all in the fucking editing room, and just fucking make a scary movie where it's just a family and they're being attacked, and it is his dad, and instead of him turning into one, he fucking stops her. But then again, you still gotta flip that thing with the mom and the dad, though. Like, he stops them and he saves them because he doesn't succumb to it. He does succumb to it. We had no reason to believe he would succumb to it because he was just a good father. The mom comes in on the phone when they first come in. She's on the phone and like yapping about like her job or whatever, and he's like, can you please take that to another room and stuff, like I'm making dinner for our daughter and stuff, and she's like, don't do that, blah 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 blah, like, and stuff. Like, she's the one who cares about work and is not paying attention to like the home life and stuff like that. So it just doesn't make any fucking sense to me. But I digress. Long story short, if you're gonna make a sympathetic monster movie, it needs to make sense, which it could have, but this one didn't, unfortunately. Or just take all the sympathy and the deeper meaning out and just make a werewolf movie where werewolves go crazy. Dog Soldiers, great werewolf movie. Not a whole lot deeper going on there. There's just werewolves and they're just fucking shit up and killing people, and it works and it's good. And like the human drama that is there between the people who are in the situation is more than enough. So yeah, I guess I'll give this like a 4.5. I'll give it a straight 5. Watch it, but it's just not as good as it could have been, unfortunately. Yeah, I guess that's pretty much, those are really my thoughts at the end of the day. There's not much more to talk about than that. Follow me on Instagram and TikTok, since it's still around, apparently. That was a whole weird, fun little thing. We all know what happened there. If you're paying attention, that was stupid. But regardless, not going to talk about that too much. YouTube, follow me everywhere. Bad Movie Debate Pod. And let me know what you thought about this one.